Why do we struggle with social anxiety in our lives? There's lots of reasons for it. This is the first of 3 videos where I'm going to be telling you what social anxiety is, how it affects us, but more importantly, how we can eliminate social anxiety from our life and live a better quality life. I'm Cardwell, I'm a counsellor and I issue lots of free information on Facebook, so welcome to this video. So I presume you're watching this video because you suffer from social anxiety, you know somebody who suffers from social anxiety, and you're realising that it has a negative effect on your life. Well, when we look at the internet and information, there's infinite amount of information that we can read about social anxiety. We can find it all out, and I'm contributing to that information now by adding more information to that. But the thing is with information is it is just that, it's information. So as we go through this video, I'm going to be asking you to change some things in your life and to put some plans into your life that will actually cause change. So instead of just having more information, we're going to be taking responsibility for the way that we live our lives to make our lives better. Now, what that means is that we have to make choices in our lives. We all have the ability to make choices. You made a choice to pick up this video, to watch this video, and that's a conscious decision to watch it. The thing about choices is, do we always make the right choices? Well, obviously not, and I certainly can speak through experiences that the choices that I've made in life haven't always been the best choices that I've made. I've made some great choices. But predominantly, we have that freedom of choice, we're able to make those choices, but very, very often we make the wrong choices. Some choices are more difficult, more complex, so I might decide I'm going to emigrate to Australia, and that involves a lot of complex thinking and a lot of planning with a lot more choices to make. Or I might make a choice to join a gym, go to the shop. Am I going this morning? Am I going this afternoon? Very, very simple choices, but the choices that we make and with the choices that we choose to make to action to change our life in some way. But the thing is with us human beings and the way that we work cognitively is we often think about making choices to make our lives better, and we don't actually do anything to change. So although we know somewhere in our mind that the choice is to say go to the gym to get fit would be really good for us, and we'll have that New Year's resolution and then it falls flat, we don't actually pick up on that. We don't actually make the choice to do it. We make the decision in our mind that it's good for us, but the physical choice to do it, we kind of don't do that. So why is it that we have these choices, we know what's good for us, but yet we still don't change? Okay, so let's apply this to social anxiety. We have social anxiety, we feel it's overbearing, we think that it controls our life, and we think that's how it is. Well, actually, we have a choice. We have a choice to do something about it and to change it so that it no longer has control over our lives. People that suffer from social anxiety will think, oh, that's very hard to believe, you've never had it. Well, actually, I have had social anxiety, and I do believe that most people, 99.9% people, can make choices to adopt change in their life in the way they think to get rid of social anxiety out of their lives. So this is all about you. For all the information and facts that we can go onto the videos and the internet and get this information, it's completely meaningless unless you slow down right now, think about your life, how it's affecting you in this moment, and actually say, I don't really want any more information, but I want to take action to choose to have a different life. That's the very first step. And you need to tell yourself that, and you need to believe in yourself that you can do it and that you can change. You need to stop your analytical mind from telling you that you can't do it and tell it, yes, you can. Yes, I'm going to do it, and I can prove this to myself by doing it. It might be hard work for you. It might not just come at the click of a finger. But if you persist and you take responsibility and you work at what we're going to look at over the next 2-3 videos, then I'm telling you that you will change for the better and you will have a better life. No question about it. So we're talking about making choices here. Research shows that when it comes to making choices, people think that they're going to change, they want to change, but actually they stay exactly where they are. So I don't know if you've ever known somebody who's in a really bad relationship or got a really rubbishy job and they moan and complain about it all the time, and you think to yourself, well, why don't they change? Why don't they do something to do that? And the reason, and we've all been in that situation, we've all found ourselves, thinking, I need to do something about my life, I need to change this, I'm fed up with this, and yet we continue to do it, or we return to a similar relationship or a similar job that gives us the same stresses and the same griefs. But the thing is, why we don't like to change is because of the way that our minds think, because our mind loves familiarity. It loves the things that we're very, very familiar with. So if we've done things for a long time and we're kind of stuck in those ways, and we tell our brain that we want to change, the brain doesn't like it. It kicks off. It'll give you every reason under the sun not to change. And the reason why it doesn't like change is because familiarity is safe. You've done things for so long, for so many times, that the brain now knows that it's quite safe. It might not be very pleasant, it might not be the best thing for you, but actually the brain is afraid of moving forward and change because it doesn't know what's involved. And this is called status quo bias. It's a bias that our brains think, and it uses this to hold us where we are because we're safe and because we're familiar. Life is very comfortable. Let's stay exactly where we are. Let's not think about changing. Even though the benefits of change can be so much better for you, we still make those choices because stay where you are, we're much safer. What do you want to change for? It isn't going to achieve anything. And then you'll buckle into that because those familiar patterns and habits of thinking will overtake the new ways of thinking that you want to try and adopt. So we end up thinking, here I am again. I think I'll join the gym next week. Maybe we'll start tomorrow. You procrastinate and you fall into the same habits. So if you're suffering from anxiety, stresses, mental illness, a lot of these feelings and emotions and the thoughts you have are really habits that you've created over some period of time that the brain will hold you in because it doesn't like change. And if it doesn't like change, it's going to do as much as it can to keep you exactly where you are. Have you ever looked at a Facebook page, and on a Facebook page there's millions and millions of bits of information, colours, text, shapes, pictures, lots of things to distract us with the adverts, but somehow our brains manage to zoom in on the information that we want to see. It goes to the stuff that's relevant to us and it kind of ignores the rest of the stuff. And that's very, very interesting. And the reason why we're able to do that is there's a part of our brain called the reticular activation system that's a filter system. And what that does is if you can imagine, if our brains were to take in all of the information that we saw all the time, they'd just explode. There's literally far too much information on a Facebook page or when we're generally looking around for our brains to take all that in. So we have to filter that information down to what's relevant to us. And the RAS, the reticular activation system, is what does this for us. But the reticular activation system will filter information, and what we call confirmation bias, it filters information that we agree with and that we are familiar with. If we disagree with it or we're not familiar with it, that is not going to be filtered through to our brains for us to think about. So this confirmation bias in the RAS is very choosy and very particular about what information it lets through to our brains for us to think about. Now, if you think about our cavemen ancestors hundreds of thousands of years ago, millions of years ago, we would have had to have been very, very careful about how we lived our lives, because basically pretty much everything wants to kill you and eat you. So there'd be wild animals, dangerous situations, other tribes that want to kill you. So the way that our brains have evolved is they've evolved to think negatively. So I see a saber-toothed tiger and a positive thought is, oh, that's cute, I like that, it's nice and furry, I'll go and give it a stroke, I'm dead. Or the negative way of thinking is, hang on a minute, what is that? That looks dangerous, let's get defensive. So by focusing on negatives, we've actually survived and evolved. That's how we've become the human beings that we are today, through focusing on the negatives to keep us safe. Those very principles that our ancestors had are still the same principles that we've got today. So by remembering negative events, by remembering things that have been fearful or things that have caused us to feel negative, that helps to keep us safe in the future, because we can reflect on these things and know what is safe and what is not safe. So the reticular activation system knows that if it is familiar, and we're familiar with that information, it's safe. So it will filter information through to our brains because it's familiar, and we know that that's keeping us safe. So the other thing that the reticular activation does with familiar information, if, for example, you say that you don't like yourself, or people don't like you, let's say that people don't like you. So you have this thought that people don't like you at work, and you've thought that a few times, and you're beginning to think about it. Well, what your reticular activation system will actually do as you go through work, it will look for evidence to reinforce your beliefs. So somebody might pass you in the corridor and not say hello, and your negative belief is, well, they obviously don't like me because nobody likes me. Or, two colleagues went to lunch together, you weren't invited. Well, obviously that's because they don't like you. So we create these negative beliefs by repetition, by believing them, and the reticular activation system in your brain will actually continue to reinforce that for you while you're telling yourself, because it's familiar. It doesn't care whether the information is negative or positive. It's just familiar. So when you do say things like, well, nobody likes me, your brain will look for that information and reinforce it, and that confirms the belief for you, and the belief becomes stronger, that creates emotions and the way that you feel a certain way based on those particular beliefs. Now, we're all familiar with the brain and the subconscious brain. You'll have seen pictures of this. Here's a graphic here to show the iceberg that is the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. And the conscious mind is about 5% of the activity that we use, and the subconscious mind is about 95%. And there's a lot of difference between the conscious and the subconscious, and I'm just going to summarise that for you now, because it's important that you understand this. Your conscious mind is what you're using now, listening to me, what you go through day to day in your waking hours, taking in information, listening to things and processing that. And the conscious mind is where all your creativity is, where your hopes and your dreams and all those thoughts, they rest in your conscious mind, and they're where you make thoughts about these things. So when you read a book, that information goes into your conscious mind, and you have that knowledge in your conscious mind for a set amount of time. Now, the subconscious mind is very, very different. The bigger part of your brain, you're not aware ordinarily that your subconscious brain is there and working, because it's working in the background. And while your conscious brain is working, while you're awake, you're not aware of your subconscious brain. Now, your subconscious brain is where all your habits, behaviours, everything that we've learned to do is stored, and they drive us to behave in a certain way without us even thinking about it or knowing about it. So it's a bit like a set of CD discs running with loads of information on that just run. CD discs, do we still use CD discs? I don't know, but a set of programs running that create behaviours without us knowing, and we go through our day, through our life, using these behaviours and attitudes and emotions, because that's how we've been conditioned, that's what we're familiar with, and that's what runs our lives, that guides us through it every day. And that's about 95% of the total mind that we actually use for thought. So it's a really massive part. But during the day, we do not have access to the subconscious mind, because that's a different thinking level. But clearly the subconscious brain is very, very important. It's a huge part of the way that we function. So our negative thoughts are processed in the subconscious brain. If we have too many of them, that creates a habit, and those habits then drive us to behave like that without us even thinking. They're automatic. If you learn to drive a car, when you first learn to drive, you're very clunky with the gears. You've got to think about when to dip the clutch. I'm dipping the clutch there, by the way. When to change gear, when to look in the mirror. You're very conscious until you've had enough driving lessons that it then becomes habitual. It goes into the subconscious, patterns are developed. You can now jump into a car, drive somewhere, get out of the car and not be aware of how many times you dip the clutch, how many times you change gear, when you looked in the mirror, and you will have had totally different thoughts because you'll be using your conscious brain. So that's a great example of how the subconscious brain drives our behaviours to allow us to perform a certain way without us even thinking about it. Now that's very much the same with our thoughts of anxiety. These run in the subconscious that cause us to feel emotions a certain way because these programs are running in the background and causing our emotions and our thoughts to be negative. So when it comes to social anxiety, these are programs that have created because we've got into a habit of thinking negatively, and our brain now is reinforcing that negativity because the information has become familiar to us. So if these programs are running in the subconscious brain and we don't ordinarily have access to this, how do we change these habits within the subconscious brain that are causing us to have, for example, social anxiety? Well, there's a couple of ways of doing that, and this is something that we're going to be moving into to help you to deal with your problems. The first way of doing it is through repetition of thinking. Just as you learn to drive a car through repetition, you can learn to change the way that you think by consciously having different thoughts, doing those consistently until they start to settle into the subconscious and become more positive habits that replace the negative habits. And the other way that we can do it is through mindfulness or meditation, because our subconscious brains open up when we fall asleep, particularly just before falling asleep, that really sort of sweet spot before you fall asleep, and in the waking hours when you're just coming out of sleep into that sort of semi-consciousness. That is the gap between the subconscious and the conscious mind, where there's a connection where you can access both. So a really good exercise for you to do, and this is one of the tasks that I want you to take responsibility for if you are determined to change your life, is this. Every single night for the rest of the week until we have this next video, I want you to, 15 minutes before you fall asleep when you're getting tired, is to spend those 15 minutes thinking about how you would perform and what you would be like if you didn't have social anxiety and were to go to a social event. So visualize yourself doing it as you're tired, as you're beginning to fall asleep, and see yourself there happy, chatty, enjoying yourself, no anxiety, not sweating, not procrastinating, not worrying about people judging you. And visualize yourself what you are like being that particular person. Okay, and I want you to do that 15 minutes before you go to sleep and fall asleep with those thoughts. And then in the morning when you wake up, I want you to do the same thing. Now that's not difficult to do. The difficulty is remembering to do it. Okay, so get some post-it notes, set an alarm clock, but you set yourself a reminder to try this very, very simple exercise for 1 week. Okay, and what you're doing in this exercise is you're conditioning your subconscious brain to start to think differently. And when you start to think differently, when we move on to our third video on CBT, you're going to be kind of equipping yourself to allow the CBT to be a little bit more effective, because you've already planned some positive thoughts in there that are going to defeat the negative automatic thoughts that we have that we'll get into at a later date. So the other thing that I want you to do this week, which is a real test for you. So our brains, as we said, focus on negative beliefs. Now, rightly so that we focus on negative beliefs, because that's what keeps us safe, and you can understand that. However, in today's society, with all social media, the news, everything about us, there's a lot of negativity. Now, it's important that we understand what's going on in the world, but how much do we need to have that reinforced with different opinions, with different attitudes, with different opinions that reinforce that negativity? So what I want you to do this week is I want you to half the amount of news that you either listen to or read. You only got to listen to the news really once a day. You've got an idea of what's going on in the world. you have to listen to it 3 or 4 times, or read about it, or comment it on Facebook, and get sucked into the whole negativity thing. Because what that's doing with your subconscious brain is it over reinforcing negative things that we worry about or get concerned about to affect the way that we feel about ourselves. So that's your first task. Half the amount of news you read or listen to, and do something else instead that is more positive and productive. Read a book, talk to friends, make it positive talk, but replace it with something good. Now, the next thing I want you to do is to not use your social media an hour before bedtime. Okay, so if you fall asleep normally at 11 o'clock, I want you not to look at social media for 1 hour before that. And that's for the same reasons, because social media is full of negativity. Every time we look at social media, our brain goes into a state of what we call anticipatory anxiety. Ooh, what's the next bad news we're going to get? Ooh, how's this going to make me feel bad? And that is the way that our brains are programmed to focus in on that negativity. So if you were taking that negativity to bed with you and falling asleep with it, that is what you're going to procrastinate in all night. That's what you're going to think about in your subconscious brain. And then when you wake up in the morning, you're going to wonder why you're in a negative mood, and you continue in that negative mood all day because you've not had a break from negativity. So 1 hour before bed, no phone, no social media, no news. 15 minutes before you fall asleep, take some time to think about how you want to feel without social anxiety. Visualize yourself in parties talking to people. You've got the message. You see what I do. Now, none of this for you is difficult to do. It's very easy. The most difficult thing is creating the habit of doing it, because you've not done it before, and you're going to forget to do it. Some mornings you'll forget, some evenings you'll forget, you won't do it. But I want you to take responsibility of that. If you are determined to conquer social anxiety and you really, really want to have a better life, then the word I'm going to use is responsibility. Take responsibility to do these actions for this week, and we'll build on this next week, and believe that you are going to conquer your social anxiety and focus on that for the next 7 days. That's it. That's all I'm asking you to do. News, digital phone at night, do some positive thinking before you fall asleep and first thing in the morning. That's it. You start to do this, take it seriously, then I am promising you that you are going to see some benefits in your life, in the way that you think and feel about yourself. And we're going to build on this next week. So if you've got something out of this video, if you've enjoyed it, you felt challenged, there's good information there for you, and you want to really build on this, then please, share this with your friends. Follow my counselling page, Cardwell Counselling. Give me a thumbs up, give me a thumbs down, make some comments, ask me some questions, whatever it is you need. I'm here to help you. My goal is to get information out to you to help you have a better life. You're going to have a better life, and you're going to touch other people's lives so they can have a better life too. So thanks for watching. Again, next video will be advertised very shortly, 1 week's time, and we're going to build on what we've learned today. Take responsibility, take your own life into your own hands, and let's see if we can make some improvements for you. Thank you.